who do not walk in the counsel of the wicked,
or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of scoffers.
but their delight is in the law of the Lord.
And on God's law they meditate day and night.
They are like trees planted by streams of water that yield their fruit in season, and their leaves do not wither.
All that they do, they prosper. Like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved.
The wicked are not so, but are like chaff, which the wind drives away.
Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous.
For the Lord knows the way of the righteous,
But the way of the wicked will perish. Like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. Amen. Thank you, Cherry. Would you please pray with me? O Lord, open our lips and our mouth shall proclaim your praise. Open our hearts and we will fall deeper in love with you. Open our minds that we would know you more, and open our hands to serve the world you adore. Amen. When I was in 6th grade, not that long ago, we worked on, one of the projects we worked on in art class was self-portraits. Imagine how they turned out. I have a couple of friends and family who are artists who say that faces are the most difficult to draw or paint. Jan? Can you back me up on that? Yes. Jan says yes. And whether they are or not, I guess might depend on the artist, but there's pretty much consensus that they're pretty hard. But either way, I kind of look back on that assignment, and it probably was not 6th grade level. But the assignment had additional value that I think is why we did it in 6th grade. Because along with our self-portrait, we were to write a letter to ourselves that was supposed to be stayed sealed until our high school graduation, 6 years later. I know, you all are laughing because, right, it's very hard for 6th graders to have that kind of patience, right? But the idea was that when we graduated high school, we could open the letter and see how far we've come. Right? We could see how we had grown and changed over the years, and maybe some of how we stayed the same. I remember thinking that this was a cool idea when we were doing it. I was not enthusiastic about the self-portrait, but I was I liked the idea of the letter. However, like you, I had my doubts in my ability to wait until I was graduated from high school. But I surprised myself that I did wait to read it, and I did look at my self-portrait. I was in 6th grade from 2004 to 2005, and I graduated high school in 2011. And reading the letter and looking at the picture, I could tell two things. First was that my skills as an artist had not improved in 6 years. I still cannot draw to save my soul, right? Second, because I'm colorblind, somebody asked about, is there anybody colorblind? At Christmas time, red and green, boy, it throws me off. You wouldn't believe it. But the second thing was when I read the letter, I did realize how much my life had changed in that time. And it's no surprise, right? Even at the mature age that some of us are now, we're likely to be different today than we were 6 years ago, than we were even 3 years ago. But the differences between 6th grade Sam and high school graduate Sam could not have been anticipated. My best friend, who I wrote about, had moved to Kentucky. Nobody saw that coming. My grandfather had passed, and my life goals had changed. I know it was art class, and the emphasis was on the self-portrait, but as I look back, that letter was the most significant part. I can't help thinking that it would have been an equally rewarding exercise for us as high school students to have written a letter to our past selves and to say, I wonder now what I would say. What would I write to junior high Sam? What would you write to your junior high self or even your high school graduate self, knowing what you know today? Would you say, good job? Would you say, don't worry? Would you say, I've learned X, Y, and Z? I bring this up because whoever wrote Psalm 1 must have been engaged in a similar practice. They were writing to future generations, sharing some of the wisdom they had gained about life. For the past month, we've been in the book of Psalms. I hope that it's been a worthwhile experience for you. I hope you've learned something. I know I have, just preparing for these sermons. In the first Sunday of the rotation, I shared a lot about background information, possible authors, the genre, the date that they were compiled or written. And when it comes to authorship, which is important for today, and the date, there's really no scholarly consensus. There's tradition that says David, but there's no scholarly consensus about the author. But many believe that the book of Psalms, as we have it, I said, is a collection of works from various authors. And it was written maybe over several hundred years. And that's especially apparent in today's reading, I think. Scholars will note that Psalm 1 functions like an introduction to the rest of the book. So when you read an introduction to a book, right, you're getting some background information and what the book has in it and some things that whoever wrote that found valuable about it. It's similar to Psalm 1, right? They're doing a similar thing. If that's the case, it would mean that it was one of the last Psalms. Even though we read it first, it was one of the last Psalms to be written. How else could the author distill the message of the other 149 chapters into one? They would have had to be written first. This would mean that Psalm 1 was written after the Assyrian Empire had ransacked the kingdom of Israel, after the Babylonian Empire took Israelites hostage to live in Babylon. It was after other historical events which had caused major hardship to Israel, and after some of the Israelites had lost touch with their faith. Whoever wrote Psalm 1 knew that Israel had survived a long period of disruption. They knew from firsthand experience that we all go through seasons of orientation and disorientation and reorientation. If you've been here, if you've been following along, you know those words. They knew that life, and even life with God, is unpredictable. So they take it upon themselves to write a letter to future generations of believers, testifying to what they have found to be true for how to live a life through all seasons. As I read the psalm, their testimony seems to be this: stand up, stand tall, and stay rooted. Stand up, stand tall, and stay rooted. Now, I know I've hit you with a lot of facts, and I try not to do that too much, but as we dive into the rest of this, I have a few more things to say, so keep on walking with me here, okay? Keep walking with me. Because as we get into the substance of this psalm, it seems to offer a reflection on two types of people, right? Two types of people. On the one hand, there's the blessed, the righteous, who delight in the law of the Lord and who meditate on his law day and night. That person is like what? A tree planted by streams of living water. Then, on the other hand, there's the wicked, who stand in the way that sinners take and sit in the company of mockers. And they are like what? Chaff that blows away. Now, at first, it seems like everything is black and white in this psalm, right? You got the blessed, you got the wicked, and there's no in between. The righteous are the people who prosper, and the wicked are the ones who do not. But let me ask you a question. In your personal experience, is it true that the only people who prosper, the only people who are fulfilled in life, are the ones who have a life of faith? In other words, does only good happen to good people? How will we answer that question? Right? No. In my experience, that is not the case. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. At the same time, good things happen to people who in our minds are not so good. Right? Would you all agree with that? Yes. What's more, the psalmist knows from Israel's history that the storms of life come for the faithful and the unfaithful alike. And so since we know this to be true, we have to find another way of looking at this psalm besides just seeing black and white, righteous and sinners. Because that's not the world we live in, right? People are not altogether good, and they're not altogether bad. To one degree or another, we're all sinners, right? We're all imperfect, and we're all saints. To one degree, we're all like trees that are planted by streams of living water, and we're all like the chaff that the wind blows away. This is not a psalm about whether we are good or bad. It's not a psalm about our morality. It's not about assigning who's who. It might seem like it. It seems like it at first, especially when you read that word law. Did anybody catch that word law? On his law, they meditate day and night. Can anybody guess, just guess, what that word is in Hebrew? You'll know it as soon as I say it. Torah. Torah. On his Torah, they meditate day and night. Now, Torah is instruction. That's how they think. That's how the Jewish community thinks about it, instruction. But even that translation is lacking. In the Jewish faith, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It's God's teaching. But Torah can also mean the totality of Jewish teaching, culture, and practice. In the Jewish tradition, Torah is a word similar to describing God's life with us and our life with God. Psalm 1 is about our relationship with God. The comparison that the author makes by using the tree and the chaff is that if you want to know what makes a life worth living, if you want to know how to weather the storm, if you want to know how to live a life that's fruitful and builds up others and builds up the community, look no further than life with God. Our relationship with God is what makes life purposeful and what gives us a sense of the sacred. It gives us courage and the strength to persevere, doesn't it? More than a comparison between the righteous and the wicked, Psalm 1 is really an illustration of the choice that we all make every day, whether we're in a season of orientation, disorientation, or reorientation. Whether things are going well in our walk with God, or whether we're going through the storms of life, or whether we've just come through to the other side, the advice of the psalm is the same. Stand up, stand tall, stay rooted in the Lord. Stand up, stand tall, stay rooted. We don't have control over much in life, do we? We can't control the weather. We can't control what happens to us. We certainly can't control how other people treat us. But we can control how we respond. We can control how we respond. We always have a choice about how we respond to any situation, and the choice that the author encourages is to stand up, stand tall, stay rooted. During the labor movement and the civil rights era in this country, Psalm 1 experienced a bit of a revival of sorts in the public square because the image of the tree in verse 3 became a powerful source of motivation and perseverance for social change. And one of the reasons that Psalm 1 became so popular is because it was popularized by artists like Pete Seeger. Anybody heard of Pete Seeger? Oh, I bet you have, Sharon. I bet you've heard of Pete Seeger. You just wait. Anybody heard of Woody Guthrie? Anybody heard of the Freedom Singers? All right. Well, they took Psalm 1 and made it into something that would give people who are fighting for justice hope and perseverance. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. Don't expect to turn back, Lord, I shall not be moved. Don't expect to turn back, Lord, I shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved became a source of strength and inspiration to people as they sought for better pay, fair labor standards, and equal treatment under the law, regardless of their skin color or whatever. In the neck of the woods that I call home, West Virginia, songs like I Shall Not Be Moved were important for sustaining unionization of the coal fields. Many of the labor and civil rights activists were men and women of faith who participated in their respective movements because they felt that it was God calling them to. They believed that their cause was holy, and that sense of calling further emboldened them. I shall not be moved. May we be so persuaded in our quest for justice and our ministry to the community, but even more so, may we be so persuaded so that we fall in love with God and so invested in God's kingdom that we shall not be moved, that whatever comes our way will stand up, stand tall, and be like trees planted by streams of living water. Let it be so. Amen and amen.